Welcome back to the Impact Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Sabine Probst Saavedra, and today I'm thrilled to welcome someone whose passion for the ocean runs deep. Jillian Morris, marine biologist, shark conservationist, educator, author, and founder of Sharks for Kids. Born and raised at the coast of Maine, Jillian developed a love for the sea early on. The childhood fascination has since grown into a remarkable global career, one that spans from scientific research, fieldwork, documentary filmmaking, to grassroots education. She spent thousands of hours diving with sharks across the globe, from the Bahamas to Turks and Caicos, and has appeared on major platforms like Shark Week. Jillian is also a published author and a member of the prestigious Ocean Artists Society. She co-founded Sharks for Kids, a nonprofit that has since reached over 155,000 students in 60 countries and 49 US states, offering free educational resources, virtual lessons, and hand-on experience to inspire the next generation of ocean advocates. Welcome to the podcast, Jillian. I'm happy to talk about all things sharks with you. What first sparked your interest in the ocean and marine biology growing up in Maine?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to dive right in talking about all things shark. So I was very lucky. I grew up on a lake, so we were around the water. I grew up swimming, and my parents loved the ocean. And so lucky in the sense that they wanted to go to the beach, they wanted to go to the ocean and do things. And so that, then your parents take you, right? When you're little, you're not going on your own, and their own, wanting to be there and crawling through tide pools in Maine and exploring and finding crabs and snails and just being really excited about any animal I could find. And I got a mask and a snorkel when I was pretty little. So then now in the lake, as well as in the ocean, being able to see myself. And that just really set up a lifelong love and connection to the ocean. And I think, as kids, we're fascinated and we're curious. And I see it in my daughter now. Any animal she finds, she wants to know about it. She asks questions. And so that curiosity is natural. And then if we can nurture that and support that, like my parents did, then I think you create these really strong connections. And for me, that curiosity never went away, and it still exists now.
It's pretty fascinating when you get your first mask and can look underwater and you actually see a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It's such an amazing experience.
It is. It's really special. And my daughter is doing it much younger than I did, and just seeing the joy in her eyes. And, we don't force it. We've said, if you want to try this, you can do this. And, getting her the tiniest mask and snorkel I've ever seen, which is really sweet. I love it. I'm like, it's like for a doll. It's so cute. But just seeing her excitement, and when she puts her face up and shouts that she's seen something, and I love that. And it's kind of like seeing the ocean all over again for me, because I'm seeing it through her eyes, and it's just, it's better than I ever thought it could be. So really, really special.
How old is she?
She is almost 5, so she'll be 5 the end of July. Amazing. So it's a really fun age.
A young explorer. And can you tell us about your journey into marine biology and what drew you specifically to sharks?
Yeah, so I think, that young experience with the ocean, and I was just really, really interested and really excited. And so I said to my parents when I was 5, I want to be a marine biologist. And I don't even know if I fully understood what that meant or what that looked like, but it was someone that did stuff in the ocean. That's what I wanted to do. And growing up in a really, really small town in Maine, I didn't know anybody that did that. I'd seen it in books. I actually saw Sylvia Earle in a book that my mom had gotten, and so it was like, well, that's really cool. Look what this lady's doing. And I want to be in the ocean and explore. And so I think my parents probably thought it was a phase and thought that it would change next week, next year, but it just never did. And so as I got older, it just became more and more apparent that that's what I wanted to do. And so I really didn't get, other than, we would go to Florida for my dad's work every year. So I'd get to snorkel and see the ocean, warmer ocean, I should say. But I didn't start diving when I was young. I didn't have access to that. I didn't go to ocean camps. I didn't, do a lot of things that other kids in different areas got to do. It just wasn't accessible for me. And so it wasn't really until I got into college, actually, that I got to learn how to dive. I got certified. I started doing internships, and then right out of university, took my first job on a research boat and just kind of dove right in, literally and figuratively, and started building those skills from research. We did shark research support. I got to work with Sylvia Earle on a project, which was really special.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. So gained a lot of skills, and then kind of from there just kept building my knowledge and skill set, taking more classes, getting more certifications, traveling the world. I added kind of media into that. I had a camera with me. My mom was always a photographer, so it was very natural for me to have a camera to kind of capture what I was doing and sharing it. And I think when I started doing that, and I'd come back from the other side of the world and say to my family and friends, like, look at this amazing experience. Look at this beautiful shark I tagged. Look at this place. And I saw right then and there the impact that photos and videos could have. They were, beyond me sharing the story, and social media was young at that stage. So, I think it was Facebook and probably MySpace at that point, but, and we weren't using it the same way we use it now. So it was very different of how we shared things, but realizing that, wow, when I show someone that photo or that video, they understand what shark tagging is, to much more than me just saying, oh, we tagged sharks. And so that really kind of started the wheels turning on what I might be able to do with my research experience, my media experience. So my path was certainly very different than a lot of other people's. I think I kind of had a curvy path, but rather than a straight to where I was going. But I'm glad I did it that way, because I tried a lot of things, learned a lot of things, and met some incredible people and mentors that if I'd just done a straight path, I probably wouldn't have found.
Mm-hmm. Did you study something else before biology?
I actually have a degree in marine science, behavioral biology, a biology degree, and a behavioral biology degree with a focus on marine animals. So yeah, I was fascinated with animal behavior. And so that's where I focused. And obviously, looking at sharks and shark behavior, and but tried to, with just biology degree as well, just a general understanding to set myself up for options. I kind of wanted to give myself options, and so that was kind of, and I don't necessarily focus on behavior now in my research, but it definitely set me up and gave me the skills and the knowledge to develop and answer other questions and develop my own projects, and having that understanding of behavior to then how do we answer other questions? What do we have to do to find that out?
And then at some point you founded Shark for Kids. What inspired that decision, and what were you hoping to fill in ocean education?
So when I would come back from trips and share photos and videos, my mom is a retired science teacher. I had friends that were teachers, and they would say, hey, do you want to come talk to my students and tell them about what you're doing? It'd be really cool. And yeah, of course I would. That would be amazing. And so I started doing that. And I just I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I loved connecting with kids. I loved their questions, their excitement. And then a lot of times I would get, and this was long before Sharks for Kids, I would get the question of, "Ooh, do you have an activity or a worksheet or something to go with your talk?" And I went, I don't. And I don't even know where you would get one. Who knows? So I thought about that, and I kept getting the same question. And I always walked out of a classroom feeling just the energy and the hope. And I loved that. And I thought, oh man, I want to do more of that. And I want to, what if we did have those resources that they're asking for? Where are they? And started researching a bit more. And there were a few things that then eventually started being created. But I thought, what if, we did this, and I didn't know what it would look like. And I kept telling my husband about it. And I think he was probably tired of hearing me talk about it. And he finally just said, why don't you just create it? Why don't you start your own company? And I went, oh, yeah, sure. I'm going to do that. And so I recruited him. He's a videographer and an incredible graphic designer. And then my best friend had also just finished his PhD doing shark research in Australia. And he'd been visiting schools as well and had a program. So I said, what if we do this thing where we create this website with resources and they're free and teachers can download them, and we can have curriculum and activities and all these things. And so we started, and we spent a year building the website, and then we launched November 7th, 2013. So, and I think really the whole goal of it was to give kids facts, get them interested and excited, but give them facts about these animals before the world gives them all sorts of misinformation through the media they consume, through their families making comments, all of that. So it was really built on the belief that kids can make an impact. They want to do something. They want to be part of something. They're far more powerful than people give them credit for, or even themselves. And how do we give them the tools and empower them to be these little change makers that they can be?
Amazing. Did you work with your mom and other teachers as well to make the program specifically for kids? Or was it just you and your best friend and your scientific knowledge that then thought, we break it down like this so kids can understand it?
So no, we went to teachers as well. Yeah, my mom was an amazing resource. One of my other very, very good friends was a marine biologist, a shark scientist, who was also teaching at the time, teaching high school science and marine science. And so, reached out because I understood that was not my area of expertise. I wanted to learn, but I wanted to work with people that already, how do we develop things that teachers are actually going to want to use? The getting the kids excited part's the easy bit. And but how do we create activities, curriculum, lesson plans, all of these things that teachers are actually going to want to use because it aligns with standards? It's things that they need, things that they can utilize in the classroom. So absolutely worked with quite a few teachers and said, I have this cool idea. Do you think that would work? And then we could adjust it to be better fitting. So yeah, absolutely. And we still work with teachers because we want these resources to actually be useful. We want it to be easy for schools to bring them in. They're not, it's already aligning with standards. It's already aligning with things they have to teach. If something's too difficult or doesn't make sense, no one's going to use it. So we want to make sure, and we're always updating, adding new things, adjusting, because how the world learns is always changing as technology is changing. So we always try to keep up with that.
Great. Starting a nonprofit is no small step, and starting one that reaches across oceans is another thing entirely. How did you go about launching Shark for Kids as an NGO?
Yeah, so it was a steep learning curve, I would say. None of us that started, we're all scientists. We did recruit another person we knew who had more of a business head, because it is a business. It's an NGO, but it also is a business. So none of us had any idea what we were doing. And to be honest, we also didn't have the budget to hire a lawyer to do all the paperwork and all of that. So we didn't have, we couldn't just hire someone to do it. So we figured it out ourselves. So all of us became, put on this business hat that to develop it. And it took us a year to build the site, to build the stuff, to get our nonprofit status, because you have to apply and then you wait and to do the application. And so, yeah, it was a lot harder than I ever thought it would be, but worth it, worth every bit of it. But yeah, it took us time because it really wasn't in any of us in our wheelhouses for, I've done this a bunch, or we didn't hire someone who'd set up NGOs. So we were learning as we were doing it. And then, yeah, it was reaching out. We did have somebody we knew was a lawyer, and we just said, after we've done this whole thing, can you just look at it and make sure we haven't messed up? And so that was really helpful. And yeah, I think it was honestly just that all of us really believed in it and we wanted to make it happen. And so the hard work and the dedication and the time, I was actually just telling somebody yesterday, we started with $500 of my money. My husband and I, we put $500 in, and that's what we started with. That's what we had. And that's all we had to do it and to start it. And yeah, but we believed in it, and it's gone way beyond whatever we ever imagined it would be. But I think myself and Derek and Donnie all just felt like it was really, really important. So putting the time, the energy, the effort in made sense because we were creating something we were really passionate about.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing what it has become. And yeah, I totally also understand you when you said, we didn't have the business hat, because when I founded our NGO, we were both designers and photographers, filmmakers. We also had no idea. It really takes some time to look into all of that, and it's different everywhere. So I can also not ask someone from a different country, because it's completely different here where we are. So yeah, it's complicated. But you kind of need to have the passion and the stamina for it to do that.
Yeah, stamina is a good word. Yes, you do. Yeah. Because it's hard. It challenges you. It frustrates you. But I think, they say it's probably cliche, but, things that are, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And if it was easy, everyone would have it, right? So it's, I think it does show that, yeah, you do have to really, really care about something to push through and make that and try and work and, blood, sweat, and tears into something, really putting, and I think for me too, it's putting myself into it. It's a direct extension of who I am, my goals, what I want to accomplish, what I believe in. And so having this incredible team that support that and listen to my idea that might have seemed crazy at the time and said, yeah, how do we do this? How do we support this? What do we do? That's been really, really special. Just having people believe in you and having people want to see you be able to make this thing become a reality, and then seeing the impact that it has and helping, in continuing with that. And that's been really special. I'm very, very lucky. I have an incredible team, and yeah, couldn't do this without them. So, yeah, it's been a really interesting, challenging, amazing journey that we're still
Definitely
on
sounds
too.
Like it. Yeah. And you just shortly said impact. How do you measure and define impact when it comes to the students and communities you reach?
So there's a few different ways. I think kind of one of the things is the feedback we get, the testimonials. Mm-hmm. When kids come back and say, I went home and told my parents, and I got my parents to swap out their plastic grocery bags for canvas. And I know that isn't specifically shark related, but it is because it affects the oceans. Or a kid makes a video, a kid writes a story, a kid does a bake sale or does a fundraiser. They make posters. They get the whole school to make posters. We do a talk with a class, and then I get a photo back that all the kids did a project. That's one thing that I mark as impact and success, because the conversation is going. Here in Bimini, when a parent stops me in the street and says, "Oh, you took my kid out, they won't stop talking about sharks." Great. I love that. That to me is impact, because the conversations are going beyond the classroom. And so that's certainly one that isn't as tangible to measure, but it's there and exists. We also, we keep track of how many students, what countries, what ages, so that we can actually say, last month we spoke to, because I just was doing my monthly updates, we spoke to 2,500 students. And so in person and virtually. So, we're looking at the numbers as well. And funders, like, when people donate, they like numbers. If they're supporting a project at NGO, and you could say, we spoke to, 25,000 students last year, and we did this and this. So we do measure that. We have surveys as well, kind of assessments we ask teachers and students to do, to try and actually more of an analytical kind of look at the impact. But so I think it's a combination of all of those things. It's not one specifically, because I guess it's depends on what you're marking as impact and success. And so we're looking at a broad range of things to really get a full picture of what we're doing.
Yeah. I think it's really not to underestimate the power that kids have, and when they share their stories, and then to inspire also their parents, their grandparents, their friends. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important what you do, and that you work with the kids, the next generations that are hopefully safeguarding our planet and our ocean.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I believe that they will do better than we've all done. And I'm not saying that, hopefully, a lot of us in this space are fighting now to change things that generations before us have done, our peers are doing and have done. And so I think kids want to be part of the change. They want to help. They want to make a difference. And it's really just giving them the tools and the support to understand that, yes, a 5-year-old can make a difference. Yes, a 6-year-old can influence their parents. Yes, kids influence their peers, their community members, the adults in their life. And that's powerful.
Yeah. What have been some of the biggest lessons you've had learning in running a nonprofit focused on youth and conservation?
Never stop learning. I think it's being open to that. I'm learning new skills all the time. And also, I think lessons are be able to pivot. I think COVID taught a lot of us. We were set up to do virtual. We've always done virtual since we launched. We were actually a Skype education partner before we launched the website. I was. And so we've always done virtual, but we became, how do we do this and shape this maybe more for a broader audience, or cover more diverse topics to help teachers and parents who became teachers or homeschool groups. So I think, always being able to learn new skills, not assuming that you've reached the point where you know everything and you can't learn anymore, and also being able to pivot and adapt with changing technology, with the world changing, with new science and development and our understanding, and also issues as they're evolving, and how to be able to best create solutions, or solution-minded, inspire that solution-minded thoughts in kids and the community. So I think those are some of the biggest ones. And I think also is that conservation is hard. It's heartbreaking. It's frustrating. It's infuriating on days, right? When you see stuff and it can be overwhelming. Like, you can feel like, well, what is this even making a difference? Like, I'm one person, and yes, this. And so I think not getting consumed by that, and really believing in one small action, one step at a time. And that's all we can do. And those add up. and add up and add it up. And it's, a ripple makes waves. And I think I really, really believe in that. And when I get overwhelmed and go, oh my gosh, this is happening in the environment. This is happening. Oh my gosh. You have to step back and go, okay, take a breath. We're doing this. This is making changes. It's happening. It's a slow process, but it's happening. And I think constantly remembering that and going back to the heart of what this was about. So I make sure if I start to feel that I'm going to book a classroom visit. I'm going to do a virtual lesson. I'm going to get back in that space that brings me joy and hope, and just to rekindle that and to remind me of, that's why we're doing that. So I think those are pretty big lessons. But I think, those are some of the strongest things I've certainly taken from this journey.
Yeah. You definitely did inspire a lot of people already, so it's definitely working.
Oh.
And the animals you're researching and working with, sharks, are often misunderstood. How do you teach the children about sharks in a way that reduces the fear and fosters the fascination?
So I think for us, it's facts. We're and reminding kids that these are wild animals. I'm not teaching kids that they're pets. I'm not teaching kids that they're not, I avoid the word dangerous. I don't like friendly and I don't like dangerous. I like, these are wild animals. Every wild animal deserves our respect. And you can be afraid of something or unsure of something and still understand that it has a place and its importance. Not everyone's going to love sharks. That's okay. As long as they understand that they have a place, they're important, and the value that these animals have for the oceans and for all of us, no matter where we live. And so I think it's just facts and, younger kids, the weird and the wonderful, getting them excited about these animals, so that as they grow up and they hear all the stereotypes and monster and man-eater, that they go, you know what? I know people are saying that, but I know the truth. I know the reality of these animals and their value and their role in the ecosystem and the cool things that they do. And so, and then, as students get older and we're working with older students, yes, we're going to bring in more complex subjects and threats and the impact that humans are having on sharks and a bit more of like the devastation. I don't hide that from young kids. I do, say that humans are doing a lot of damage to the ocean, pollution, overfishing, and explaining what that means and what that looks like. But I think it's just maybe helping them also see another side to sharks. Sharks are not getting the same attention that a koala, a turtle, a dolphin. They're not the cute, cuddly kittens and puppies that everyone wants to rescue and help. But you can still think an animal is amazing. But sometimes if people don't have that, oh, look at it, it's so cute reaction, it can be harder to get them to care. So helping them see the really cool, some sharks can glow, some sharks can leap out of the water. Some, the lemon sharks we study have little belly buttons, and getting kids excited about those fun, weird, wonderful facts so that they're seeing it differently and seeing a reality of sharks versus all the media that eventually they're gonna, if they haven't already. It's amazing to me when I talk to a 5-year-old that lives in a landlocked state and they're like, oh, sharks are scary monsters. How did you get that? Where did you get that from? You've never seen the ocean. You've never seen a shark. Why are you saying that? And it's because they're inundated with, misinformation all the time. So I think if you make it fun, interesting, engaging, exciting, then as they encounter those negative and, misinformation, they can think differently because they've been armed with the correct information and the tools to critically think and, say, okay, yeah, people say that, or maybe even educate others because they've learned differently and they've learned facts instead of fear.
And you also have projects where you work with the kids and sharks directly together. What role do local students play in marine conservation, especially in places like Bimini and the Bahamas?
So we do a lot of outreach here in Bimini. We're not doing our research projects in Turks and Caicos, but we do take kids out, and the Bahamas is the shark diving capital of the world. It's more people come here to see sharks, and also it's a shark sanctuary. So they've been protected. It's illegal to catch and kill sharks here. So if we want to keep the ecosystems thriving here, we want to make ecotourism successful, and in turn that ecotourism being successful and bringing in over 113 million US dollars a year to the Bahamas, you need to keep that going, and you need people to be part of that. You need the local community to be part of that. So helping students get out and see what's in their own backyard is really, really important. Connecting that community, and helping them understand what's possible, what they're protecting, what they're part of, and taking a sense of ownership and a sense of pride. So we always talk about that in the school visits, that, this is a sanctuary. What does that mean? Why is it important? How does it affect you? Sometimes understanding ecosystem balance is a pretty big topic, and sometimes it's hard for people to actually envision what that looks like and means. But when you talk about money, people understand that. I don't care where you're from. And so if you talk about the value of these animals kept alive and what they bring, jobs, money, and it isn't just the dive shop, right? It's the taxis, the straw market, the Airbnbs, the restaurants, the bars, the community benefits when people come in to see sharks. And because of these conversations, and then taking kids out to see that, to put their face in the water, is amazing. And I had a student field trip back in March, and the 3 staff on the boat from the Bimini Scuba Center, the dive shop we work with, all had been through our program. And now they're all working there. They're all teaching guests, visitors, about the oceans, about sharks. And they're now inspiring the next generation of kids from the community. And I paused and was like, wait a minute. And I looked at them and I'm like, you guys. And I said to the owner of the shop, Neil, I said, did you do that deliberately? And he's like, no, it was the schedule. And I was like, do you understand what we just did? And both of us were just, it's still giving me goosebumps talking about it now, because it was just a full circle moment that I've known these kids since they were young. They did field trips. They heard me talk about sharks in their class. And now they're taking that. It's a job. It's a career. And they're teaching all these visitors about their country and the value of sharks here and what's happening. And that is impact. That's just really powerful. And they're now stewards for this, and the way they vote, how they raise their kids, how they teach the community, that's making an impact. And so getting kids involved is so important, not only for them, but for the community as well. And obviously for the oceans and the animals.
So you work a lot with kids. What is the most funny or surprising question a child has ever asked you about sharks?
The most surprising, we had a shark. We were running these education days in Florida, partnering with an education center, and they focused on turtles. And so we would do like a turtle shark. And Derek, who's our co-founder, is a shark scientist, but also works with sea turtles. So we did these kind of cool, fun turtle shark days. And one of the turtle patrols had found a dead shark on the beach. So we dissected it to see, what happened. And I said to, we always say to the students, this isn't a preserved shark. We don't know what we're going to find. And so we typically do this for older students, but this mother had insisted that her daughter be there. I think she was 6. And I was like, ooh, that's very young. Like, do you understand that this is what this is? And she was like, yeah, because the older sibling was there. I said, okay, it's your choice. Like, I'm not going to make a decision as a parent. Okay. It's this little girl right in the front, looks at us and goes, how many liters of blood are in that shark? Or how many liters of blood do sharks have? And I was like, I looked at Derek. I was like, that's a wonderful question. I don't know if anyone knows. Like, I don't know if that's been studied. I don't know. And so we certainly were like, oh, and she was just sitting there, a 6-year-old, had a little bow in her hair. Like, it was just, and it just stopped us. And we both kind of stumbled, because I've been asked a lot of, kids will ask questions like, oh, you know, how do you tell male or female, or how do they reproduce? Because they think they're going to trip you up. And like, no, I've answered that question a million times. But this one stopped both of us and went, oh, wow. So I think those moments, or when a kid brings up a species that you wouldn't think they would know about, because kids, the common ones they see, great hammerheads, white sharks, tigers, makos, bulls. But when they're like, can you tell me about, a wobbegong? And you're like, oh, I love that you know that. And so I think those ones are really fun when kids come out with some sort of question that you'd never expect, or they're excited about a species that most kids have never heard of, or most people have never heard of. And you see the teacher like, what's that? They're, I love those moments. And I think I enjoy those questions too. And I love it when kids are thinking, and you see them, they're trying to piece things together in the way they ask questions. And kids are creative, they're spontaneous, the way they think and connect things. And just thinking of the questions my daughter asks and how she gets there. And so I love it. I love, especially the younger kids, some of the questions they come up with. It's really, really fun. And you never know what they're going to say, which is also keeping you on your toes a bit and ready. I think that's a really fun. So there's lots of great questions, but I think that one was certainly the most surprising I've ever had.
And have you researched it later? Did someone do a study for that?
I don't think I honestly don't, and I don't remember, because it was quite a few years ago. I'm sure I looked it up and don't know, but and I'm sure we have an approximate maybe, but it's also one of those things that, and I tell students, is not, when you think about and you develop a research project, you're asking questions, this is my opinion, that are going to make an impact for that animal, for that species, for the environment. And not every question may be leading to that. So I think it's important to understand when we think about what we're trying to understand about an animal. And so we set a project around that of how to answer those questions, is what is the value in answering that question? Does it need to be answered? Does it make an impact? And that's what, I always try and think about when developing projects, or how are we going to answer this? Well, is that question, does it need to be answered? What's the outcome? Why do we need to answer that? And what's the hope that answering that will give and provide that? And so I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Well, then let's dive more into the shark biology and of your project, Project Lemonade. What is that about?
So Lemonade, we are focusing on lemon sharks and trying to help them. My husband came up with the name, and we ran with it because we're like, oh, that's actually really fun. And so the project started with, we were in Turks and Caicos for a film festival, doing some outreach and shark programs and for students in the community, and got talking about lemon sharks and our experience working with them and the community. And a lot of people were talking about the amount of lemon sharks that were there, and that they had proposed a shark sanctuary, but had never been finalized. And one of the challenges was lack of data. And so the project sort of conversation, and we were meeting with some of the government officials and permitting agents. And so the idea of this project came about. And we were really excited. And then COVID hit, so we had to pause for a couple of years, and then got started. And the goal was really to kind of do an initial assessment of the lemon shark population in some of the larger areas that, local knowledge said, right, this is an area that we've been seeing lemon sharks for 20 plus years. Okay. So we partner with a dive shop that's called Big Blue Collective, but the owners grew up there. So they helped us, their crew and stuff helped us figure out where to fish. And the idea is, one, to see the population to understand that. Also these nursery habitats to see. So lemon sharks spend the first few years of their life in a mangrove nursery. The female will get as close as she can to the mangroves to give birth. And we know through research in the Bahamas and Florida that they come in on, these full moon, high tides, get as close as they can. They give live birth. They drop their pups into the mangroves and they leave. So also trying to understand how many mothers are coming into these different areas, if it is that time period, if that's the same as we know from other areas. And then just kind of understanding as well how long they stay there. So because we, looking at the size and the structure of the mangroves and what's happening, trying to figure out, do they stay as long? Where are they going when they leave? And
do you mean the babies or the moms?
The babies, yeah. The babies will spend typically 5 to 7 years, but we don't think they do that in Turks and Caicos. We think they're leaving the mangroves sooner than that. And so trying to understand then, well, where are they going? And because if you're not going to have a shark sanctuary, maybe there can be a season, because they do fish for lemon sharks there. So that's we're trying to understand too is, how is that affecting the population? And is it, how much of an impact, how many are being caught, and to kind of fill in these gaps that have never been answered, to kind of give the government and the permitting agencies and fisheries, here's what we've found out. And we suggest this as far as management and conservation, and hope that, that makes a change and impacts something, whether it is a full sanctuary or if it's going to be more protected areas. One of the areas we work in is a no-take zone. It's a national park. So that's already protected, but maybe we need more of those areas. And so, so our focus has been on young of the year and juveniles. So kind of newborns all the way up to about 3. And then this year we added adults and larger ones. We're actually acoustic tagging them. So putting a tag in that's giving off a signal, and then having receivers to help us track their movement. All the other sharks get a pit tag, which is the same. And every shark we catch gets a pit tag there, but it's similar to cats or dogs getting microchipped. And it's just this tiny, tiny little tag that goes in, and every shark we catch, we scan, and then we can measure it, see if it's in a new area, if it's grown, and which is always really exciting when we get a recap. And then if not, then we put a tag in, and it's really just kind of an internal name tag for these sharks. And they don't give us the movement so much as if we catch it again and we go, oh, it's in a new area. We know it's moved, but we don't necessarily know the path it took, whereas the acoustics give us a little bit more insight into how they're using an area and their movements.
And how big do those sharks get? Because if I imagine a mangrove forest, I see like these roots. These are quite small.
Yeah, the little ones. We're in the guys that are in the mangroves are anywhere in the probably 60, little less than 60 centimeters, up to, I think probably the largest one we've caught in and around the mangroves is probably about 75 centimeters. Certainly slightly bigger at the edge. And it depends on, how some of these mangrove channels are much deeper. So you could have an 80 centimeter to 100 centimeter long shark moving in and out of there, but not necessarily up in the roots and the really shallow areas. So, because simply big predators cannot get in there. That's why these little sharks are there. There's food and it's a safe place to be. So from other sharks, from barracuda, and that will prey on those little guys. So it does give them a safe space to be and grow up and become a shark and grow and learn until they're ready to go into deeper water. So it's really cool to see. And they have friendships in there. They have buddies and they're social, and just really, really amazing and really fun stuff to talk to kids about too. Like, these little sharks are born alive and they're connected to their mom with an umbilical cord. So they have a little belly button and they have buddies, and you just see kids go, what? And it's even adults are like, what? And it's cool. It's reminding you, I think, when we have something in common, with an animal or something, it's easier for us to connect, right? And I think a lot of people assume fish, sharks are just mindless, and it's not. They're social, they're intelligent, and so I think it helps people understand and see a different side of these animals, and that creates empathy or understanding in a better way.
Mm-hmm. And when they are fully grown, how big are they then?
Just over 3 meters. I mean, those are some of the bigger ones. And when we caught, the biggest one we caught was 2.5 meters. And that was a mature female. So yeah, I'm trying to think. Like the biggest one I've probably ever seen is probably about 8 to 9 feet. So yeah, similar. And so yeah, they are they do get to be quite a larger shark as far as in their range. Certainly lemons, reefs, bulls, tigers, hammers are they're not going to be as big as a tiger or hammer, but still a large species.
And what are the most fascinating facts about these sharks?
So I think that they have a belly button. It's really cool. They don't have it their whole life.
That is really cool.
It does fade. And what's one of the things we look at the project is we actually look how open or closed it is. And they can also bite their own tail, which we actually have a fun video of one that it bit its own tail and it wouldn't let go. They're super flexible. I always tell the kids they'd be really good at yoga if they did yoga. They can bite their own tail. They're super flexible. And we know that mom goes back to the place she was born to give birth. So I think that's really incredible. And
isn't that also like turtles?
Yeah, turtles, salmon. Yeah, so I think helping people, think about what this mom has done. And she's carried them for almost a year. And then she swims up and gets as close as the mangroves, almost beaching herself to drop those pups and give them the best chance of survival. And it just shows you that while there's no maternal care once they're born, the fact that she's done that does show more of a level of maternal care than maybe where you see fish just spawning. And so I think people also oftentimes ask me like, oh, sharks spawn. No, they don't. They have internal fertilization. And so that is a level of care that, while it isn't, she's not staying there, she's not sitting there guarding them, helping them, protecting them, feeding them, teaching them, that is a level of maternal care. And I think people probably don't realize that or expect that from sharks.
What was the most interesting find you had during Project Lemonade so far?
So I think we're still learning a lot, because when you start a project, right, it takes time to actually kind of start being able to see patterns or analyzing data. We did see one of our sharks from last year move to an area quite a far distance away, which that little shark probably shouldn't have done. It took some big risks crossing some deep water channels. So we were actually really surprised about that. And so, yeah, so each season we go, we're starting to, it's a puzzle and we're putting the pieces together. So I think that's really, really interesting. And looking at sizing, looking at, human impact, seeing how, ecotourism in these areas where people are going to see the mangroves and exploring, but how is that affecting the behavior of these little sharks and where they're spending their time and how they're moving. I think so. All of it's actually really quite interesting because it's new. It's not been looked at and not actually tried to be analyzed in any kind of quantifiable way before. And so I think for us, every shark we catch, every season we go is exciting because it's all new. All of it is. And we're learning a lot. And so, yeah, I think that's the whole thing. And getting the kids out. I mean, a big part of it too is the research, but it's the fact that we take local high school students with us. And so getting them in the field and helping them connect and understand to what we're doing and why we're doing it and feeling like they're part of it. And hopefully some of them will, as they get older, take over and be part of it and be lead some of this work. So that's really, really exciting as well.
Yeah, maybe like the women that were working in the dive center that you told about earlier.
Yeah. And that's when we set up the project, it was always that it was going to be a community project. It was always that we were going to work with local partners. We were going to work with local community members. DECR is the permitting agency. We've had DECR team members, fisheries, people from fisheries. We partner with Ministry of Education, Big Blue Collective, which is the local dive shop. Their knowledge has been invaluable in their partnership. And so in the local youth center. And yeah, it was always that if we were going to do this, we were going to get kids out with us. And so, there's certain days in the field where we don't take students. We're on a small boat. We're out in the, it's further away, but we do plan a set amount of student days and trips for every field season. And because, what I spoke to before, having them be part of it, one, I would have been so excited as a high school student to go out and do something like that. So one, it's just really exciting and cool, but helping them understand this is an opportunity for them. This is something that they can do, and collecting real data and being part of that and having a voice and a say in that, but also just seeing a shark up close. A lot of these kids are afraid. They don't understand. They've not had that experience. So seeing a little shark, getting to touch it, getting to tag it, you can tell that we're creating moments that they won't ever forget. And that's going to shape how they approach careers, how they vote, how they shop, how they view their relationship with the environment as well. And that comes from an afternoon out with us on the water with sharks. And that's really, really special to be able to give that to these students. And if you asked anyone on the team, our local team, our team that travels in, I guarantee that part is the favorite for everyone. That's the best part. It really is. Just the excitement and joy you see on these kids. And, teenagers everywhere in the world are kind of like, they don't want to act too excited or, be cool, right? It doesn't matter where you are. Yeah. They don't want to, they're trying to be cool. And what are my friends doing? And just to see the smiles after you let a kid tag a shark, and they can't hide it. I don't care what they're trying. They cannot hide it. And then they're all excited. And so they go from kind of quiet at the beginning to just everyone's excited. They're all smiling. They're all chatting. And I love that. I think that's really, really cool to get a group of teenagers smiling and excited. You're doing something cool, right? And so I think, but it's beyond that. We're not trying to do it just to be cool, but it's an impact, right? That because it was interesting and cool for them, they're going to talk about it with their parents. They're going to talk about it with their friends, their family, and they're going to remember that, right? And they're going to think about that and keep that with them. And that is where we're seeing long-lasting impact and effect on the community.
Yeah, that's great. And talking about great, the great hammerhead is one of the most unique looking sharks. What biological advantages does its head shape provide?
So the cephalofoil, right? It's such an incredible feature that it's got its own name. And people often look at it and go, it's really weird. Well, it is, but it's also amazing. And some of the advantages or the adaptations this shark have are really around that head. The larger surface area, simply because of the shape and the size, they have more of the ampullae of Lorenzini. They're electroreceptors. Thinking like it's a super powered metal detector. I mean, that's what that head is. And things like stingrays that are buried in the sand that they love to eat, helping them find that animal. So, electroreception is allowing them to detect the heartbeat or muscle movement of an animal. So that stingray that's camouflaged, they don't see it, hear it, smell it, but when they get close enough, they can feel its heartbeat. And so, adapted to hunt and find food. Their ability to turn with their very large dorsal fin allows them to be really agile when catching those stingrays and small sharks. The position of their eyes on the head as well. People are like, oh, they can't see anything. Nope, they can see almost fully all the way around, above and below. So they have super powered vision. Their nares, their nostrils are wider. So it actually helps them pinpoint where a smell is coming from, because, you know, our nose is here, right? We have to have scent approaching in that way. But if your one was here and here, you can detect a smell from different further, just because you're expanding kind of where your sensors are. So just all of that, right, is this amazing super powered head. But despite all that, they're still a critically endangered species, which is, you know, is really sad. These animals, we do an entire lesson. I wrote a book on shark superpowers, all their adaptations for kids. And despite having all of these incredible abilities, from glowing, leaping, camouflage, and the hammerhead, right, is probably, I think, the most superpowered shark. Despite all that, they can't out-swim, out-compete, out-adapt what we're doing to the oceans. And because they didn't evolve or adapt to deal with that. And I think that's a really important message, and helps kids understand that, right? And adults too, right? This animal can do all these amazing things to help it navigate the oceans, find food, survive. But now we've introduced nets, plastic pollution, overfishing, all these things, and we're wiping them out. And the reality is, you know, critically endangered species, if we don't act now, immediately, and take action as much as we can, they're going to be gone. Like, they're racing towards extinction. And and they're my favorite animal on the planet. And so I will always try and do as much as I can for sharks in general, but particularly those, because I also get to spend a lot of time diving with them. So have a really, I think, deep connection with that species. And so anytime I can teach, educate, work in conservation for that, I will do everything I can.
Yeah. The last time I've been diving, I've also seen the human impact on sharks. One had a fin hanging underneath, which was just a little bit attached anymore. Another one had a hook with a rope in his mouth. And it's really cruel to see what we're doing to these animals. And I think also what a lot of people don't think of, I mean, the ocean is not ours. It's their habitat. It's their home. We're just guests. And then we act like it's our fridge and we take everything out of it. It's just a bad way of thinking. And especially people that don't need to take from the ocean because we have enough on land, then I think we shouldn't.
Yeah, I think it's, the ocean is our heartbeat. It's the livelihood. It feeds people. And we certainly need to make better choices. And I think, humans treat it also as their dumpster, right? And, decades ago, it was throw all the trash in the ocean because we don't even understand. And you can say at that point, maybe they didn't, but we know better now. We know, right? And there's no excuse now. We have access to more information than we ever have. But it isn't, it's tricky because large companies, large, entities need to be held accountable. It's not, that one fisherman on a tiny island that's catching a fish to feed his family. That's not the problem. It's the large scale impact. And then, I see on the beach here, trash that washes up that is trash that you can't get here on the island, right? It's items you cannot buy. So it's washed up. And yes, I'm not saying that locals and tourists alike don't dump trash, but there's also a lot of trash that washes up that comes from other places. And so you're dealing with all of that. And every day there's trash. And every day we go on the water, there's trash, there's balloons. We see animals tangled. We see hooks. Even here, you're not supposed to fish for sharks, but if you're fishing for other things, sometimes, right, sharks get caught. And so we see them. We see rays with the hooks in them too. And so now, this animal's got this thing, and sometimes it's okay, right? But sometimes it's affecting how it's feeding. We had a hammerhead a few years back that came in with a broken jaw, and it couldn't feed properly. That animal's not going to survive. And, it goes let go, but that jaw was broken by people. That was not a natural thing that happened. It was human impact did that. And, and so those are the moments that dive, I'm sure, like, you love the ocean, but it's heartbreaking, right? And so those are the moments that you can feel like, can we actually do anything? Or was it just too big of a fight? Then I go into a class, then I go talk to students. And it just, it reminds me that no, it's worth it. All of it's worth it. And we are.
Yeah. I think it's important to share the messages and educate people. One thing that is, I don't know why it's so burnt in my head, but when I was filming a documentary, I saw a guy taking out red sea stars of the ocean and drying them on rocks. And I asked him what he's doing and what he wants to do with the sea stars, and he just asked me if I want one. I'm like, no, I want them to be alive. And that sparked the idea of doing now this year a campaign with our organization where we teach children and adults about what lives in the beaches and in the snorkeling areas, so they know what is an animal, what is a plant, and how do we behave around that. And even though we are in a landlocked country, we're also teaching the kids here, because we know that most of them will go to holiday there in summer, and we just don't learn about it. So we're currently also trying to hopefully make a positive impact this year.
I love that.
In the summer.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think people don't realize that, that crab, that shell, that clam, that sea star is a living thing. And, when you go to these stores, I was just in the Florida Keys, and we went in the store, and it had all the shells piled up, and sea stars piled up, and seahorses. And you're like, yeah. And at this stage, I assume they're being farmed specifically for this. I've never really dived into that area, but that doesn't make it any better. Energy and resources are going into an animal that's just going to be a dried trinket. I get it. Like, I have shells I've found on the beach here. I'm not saying I don't, but going out and they're empty, they've washed up. Okay. But going out and just seeing the piles and piles and piles of, and I've never really dived in. And they had shark jaws too, right? So then I'm looking at that, and that's where I'm like, oh, interesting. I want to see what shark it is and where do I think it's coming from? And then asking the person, like, just curious, I know what species this is, but do you know where they came from? And they don't. They have no idea. They're just in there selling shells and postcards and t-shirts, and they have no idea. It's not their fault. But the lack of information or connection to it, out of sight, out of mind. I don't know it, so I don't maybe care about it. And, that's why I love doing programs with kids in landlocked places, because they need to know about the ocean, maybe even more than other kids, because they're still making an impact. Even though they don't live near the beach, they're still a big, part of the population that's making an impact. And so they deserve to know. I don't think we ignore, they don't live near the beach, so we don't need to bother teaching them. Wrong. Absolutely not. They 100% deserve to know about it, and they need to, because the time is now. We need to have everybody on board to make change, and those kids can make an impact, and they deserve to understand that.
And we're also influencing the ocean through our rivers. If we dump a lot of trash in there, or from the agricultural runoff, everything goes in there, it will end up at some point in the ocean. So we need to be aware of that too, that we're impacting the ocean from land, even though we are far away from the ocean. But let's go back to sharks. What are some of the key differences in behavior and biology between species like lemon sharks and hammerheads?
So I think probably the biggest one is gray hammerheads are typically a solitary species. When you see the schooling, it's scalloped hammerheads. So the greats that we have here in Bimini, it's really special because you typically wouldn't see more than one. And because it is a provisioning, it's a shark dive, they are fed here. But we know they're in the area, and to see, 6, 7, 8 great hammerheads on a dive, whereas lemon sharks are certainly more social when they're young and, will form big aggregations when they're adults as well for breeding. So I think that's one of the kind of the most significant differences. You do see their personalities in both. Some are more shy, some are more bold. I think that's really, really interesting. Size, feeding, what their diet is. Great hammerheads, when they're larger, are going to feed on sharks and stingrays, whereas lemon sharks are going to feed on different species of fish or, maybe smaller sharks. But so, yeah, I think it also kind of highlights that how diverse sharks are and how different, even though they're all sharks, which I think is really, really interesting.
What is the smallest and the biggest shark?
So whale shark is the biggest species, and and the dwarf lantern shark's the smallest. Although the pocket shark, which was just discovered a few years back, not because it's could fit in your hand or fit in your pocket, but they're very small. They have little pockets behind their pectoral fins, little openings, and so they're now, I think the smallest one was slightly smaller. So certainly those two. And, talking about an animal that would fit in your hand versus one that's, bigger than a school bus. So, but they're both sharks. And I think that's so fascinating that they're just so different. Right. And it's a cool thing to share that size difference with kids and adults.
You just said hammerheads also eat other sharks. What sharks do they eat?
Black tips in particular. I know around in Florida and the Bahamas, they'll go after eagle rays, southern stingrays. So yeah, it's pretty incredible to see an animal that big, how agile they are and how they can turn because obviously the little sharks swimming all around, and to see a big animal be able to turn like that is very impressive.
Definitely sounds like it. What are the biggest threats facing these species today in the Bahamas and globally?
So I think, it's the sanctuaries here. So we're not facing commercial longlines, commercial fishing at a scale. Finning as well isn't happening here. But overfishing is the biggest thing. It's the biggest threat. It's driving over 1/3 of all sharks and their relatives towards extinction. Pollution, climate change, fear. Right? Catching just for sport and misunderstanding. Bycatch, which plays into the overfishing of bycatch targeting one animal and catching a bunch of others. And so, and I think, just combating all of that is education, right? And changes and understanding. And the more education we can share and, not just for kids, but in general, helping people really understand what's happening and what they can do is where you're going to see change happen. Overfishing is certainly the biggest driver of these animals headed towards extinction.
You don't just teach about sharks, you study them, track them, and swim alongside them. Your work involves studying behavior, migration, and habitat use. Can you describe your scientific approach and methodology?
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit about it. So for Project Lemonade, right, to understand, we are catching the sharks. We take our measurements. So we measure 3 length measurements for each species, each individual. And we insert a little pit tag, which goes just under the dorsal fin. We track male or female. We look at, the health of the animal as well, and mark the location that we caught it. And then when we go back, some of the data that's really helpful is recaptures. So when we went back this year and we caught sharks we've previously caught, we look at their growth rates. Where are they? Did they stay in the area? Or did they move? And then we can also look at how many sharks from the year before we didn't catch. So what happened? Predation, natural, they didn't survive. Is human impact? Were they caught? Those are some of the pieces that we're trying to figure out, but also seeing, or is it simply that we just didn't catch them the days we went out? Maybe they were more cautious and they stayed towards a different area. So trying to kind of understand that, I think, is a big part of actually fully understanding the impact that humans are having, and also the challenges of fully understanding what a population looks like, because you're dealing with a lot of external factors. And it's also, you can't guarantee you're going to catch all the animals in an area. I mean, so we also use BRUVs, which are baited remote underwater video systems. So we put those in, and they record what's in the area. So if we see, and we pull that up, and we download our footage, and we see 10 sharks, but we only caught 5, okay, we know we're not, that's helping us fill in the full picture. And then, okay, what do we need to adjust in order to catch those other 5? And so that's kind of that part of it. Other projects I've worked on, we're looking at tiger shark migration. So we're using much bigger tags that actually are satellite tags, so they track movements. So that's a very different project, trying to look at actual migration patterns and where females are going and where they might be giving birth. So using different equipment to answer those questions.
What are the biggest mistakes people make when photographing marine wildlife, as you're also a really talented photographer and filmmaker?
Oh, well, thank you. Biggest mistake is chasing. Do not chase wildlife. Do not chase animals. Be patient. You're going to get what I used to say to people is fish butts. Like, if you're chasing an animal, and you're also you can cause stress on that animal too. And be patient. Let the moment, happen, and you're going to have much better success, and you're going to do it in a way that's respectful to the animal that you're trying to photograph. If it's moving, right? If it's a slower animal, it's not, I'm talking about, sharks, dolphins, whales, anything, turtles. Don't chase. You're just going to chase it away. It might not come back at all, and you're not going to get the shots that you want.
Yeah. Great advice. And let's talk about something that's often left out of conservation stories, motherhood. Yet I think it's a really important topic to bring into conservation career conversations, and something many of us women think about when choosing a career. And also a lot of us are balancing a family and a career, and it's a reality for many. As a mother, how has parenthood influenced the conservation work or the approach?
It's definitely, I've worked around kids, so a lot, and I focused on that, but it's so different with my daughter. I want her, we have a lot of great conversations now that she's almost 5, and, we don't push. We spend a lot of time in the water, my husband and I, and so we want her to be part of that. So we've kind of let her lead us in her own curiosity and what she wants to do. And I'm very happy that she loves seeing sharks and she gets excited, but she's also obsessed with hermit crabs and, the little fish. And there were these tiny little thimble jellies that were on the beach, and we rescued some of them back. And so she's understanding, and I didn't ask her to do that. She made that choice and asked for help. And so I think it just shows you how much kids learn from us and how much, they see what we're doing. But it just, honestly, I want her to see great hammerheads. I want her to scuba dive with them. I want her to see beautiful, healthy oceans. So I think for myself, it's the drive do more and protect more, because now I've always been doing it for the environment, for the animals, but now I've added this more personal piece of, I want her to have that. And I want to raise her to be compassionate, respectful, kind to humans, to the planet, to animals. And so that, I think, is just really ignited even more kind of, focus for me of why I'm doing this, and this passion, and hopefully sharing that passion, and for her to grow up understanding why mommy and daddy did this, why they cared, and why, what our work that we're doing means. And she's starting, to get more into that. So it's really, really special now, teaching my own daughter, and we've done some of my little talks with her too. She sees what mommy's doing, and so she's seen the slides, and she knows we have a lot of shark books, we have a lot of shark toys, stuffed animals, all of that. And she's curious about that. She loves ocean books. She loves all the different animals. And we're learning that and sharing that with her. And so it's really, really special. It's, she's the reason that Sharks for Kids, right? A kid is created, but now it's even more special because it's our kid, and she's getting that. So it's completely changed it. Changed the way I think and approach things, and what I want for her and the future and her future, and just, how I approach all the situations and balancing it all. It's certainly a balancing act. And I'm a full-time mom, and, my husband travels a lot for his work. So yeah, balancing all of that can be really challenging, but I love it, and it's worth it. And I've done it on my terms, and we've done it on kind of our terms, and we're doing it a little bit non-traditional, but that's okay, right? You can write your own story, and you don't have to do it like everybody else did or the path that they followed. And I've done that with my career, and now how, we're, our family, where we are, and how we're living, and the way we're raising our daughter.
But it's definitely a very inspiring path. And one last question. If you could give listeners one takeaway about sharks and why they matter, what would it be?
I think it's just, these animals play a critical role. They are keeping our oceans healthy and balanced and clean. And it doesn't matter where you live, you need healthy oceans. Doesn't matter. It's part of your life every single day. And I think people don't realize how connected to the ocean we all are. And sharks are vital for that. And they're not these man-eating monsters. They're important. They're amazing, but they're also extremely important for our oceans. And I want everyone to know that, and to know that connection that we have to the oceans and sharks, no matter where we live.
Thank you so much for having been on the podcast and giving us an insight into sharks and your work with Sharks for Kids. It was amazing talking with you and getting to know you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it was a pleasure chatting with you as well.
Thank you.